won't you go and see the bishop before you and Ron?
Please, Mother, we've been over this 100 times. You know that nothing you can say will change my mind.
Well, you can't blame me for still trying.
You said yourself that Ron is a good, clean fellow.
I know he is.
He's a college graduate.
I know.
He's sweet and he's kind.
I know all these things.
Well, look at Aunt Jane. She married out of the church, and she's been happy.
In a measure. But she's regretted all her life that she didn't marry in the church. I know she has.
That's a lot of nonsense. If she were unhappy, she'd show it.
Connie, do you realize that if you marry a man who is not a member of our church...
Mother, I'm going to marry Ron because I'm in love with him. I'll never be happy marrying anyone else. I know I won't. Seems to me that if you cared anything about me, you'd think a little more about my happiness. Instead, all you're really thinking about is what the people in the ward will say. Well, I don't care what anyone says. I'm marrying Ron.
Watch your step, honey. What a view!
It is lovely.
Well, you're not exactly spilling over with happiness tonight. Got a problem?
No, not exactly.
Come on, let's have it.
Well, you're sure lucky you don't have to live at home.
Oh, another lecture, huh?
You'd think religion was the only thing that mattered in the whole world.
You're the only thing that matters to me.
Ron.
Uh-huh.
How much does your religion mean to you?
About as much as yours does to you, I suppose.
After we're married, let's promise never even to mention religion. I won't talk about mine, and you won't talk about yours. In that way, it won't be a stumbling block.
I'll buy that.
And we'll drive down to Glen Oaks and get married by a justice of the peace.
Okay. Remember my telling you about Ralph, that friend of mine that lives in Glen Oaks?
No, I don't recall.
Well, you remember, we went all through school together. That is, until he went in the ministry. Well, he's living down in Glen Oaks now.
Ron, I'm way ahead of you. You want him to marry us, don't you?
Well, sure, I'd like him to. Seems kind of silly, a good friend right there, and we go to a justice of the peace.
Look, I thought the whole idea was that we were going to be neutral. I wasn't going to mention my religion, and you weren't.
Okay. We'll be married by the best-looking justice of the peace that Glen Oaks can furnish. Come on, honey. Let's forget it.
You know, Connie's never been disobedient in her life. She's always been a level-headed, conscientious girl. And now to have this. I can't understand what's come over her. What'll we do, Bishop? How can we convince her that what she's doing is wrong?
It isn't going to be easy. From all I can gather, she's pretty sold on this boy.
It isn't that we don't like Ron, but, well, you know the problem, Bishop.
Well, hello, Bishop.
Hello, Connie. How are you?
Don't tell me you've come to join in the plot against me. You know, you'd think my marriage was the biggest event since Princess Margaret's.
You know, it is a pretty important undertaking at that, Connie. Your parents and I were wondering if you had a few minutes...
I'm sorry, Bishop, but I have an appointment. I really must hurry. Maybe some other time.
Connie, please. I'll call Beverly and tell her you'll be a little late.
Mother, I know you mean well. And I know why you and Daddy got the bishop here tonight, but I'm sorry, it just won't work. I've been lectured to by you, by Uncle George, by Sister Wayman, and what good has it done? It's just upset us and made us all terribly unhappy. I'm sorry, Bishop, I don't mean to be rude, but, well, there's just no use in all this, because you see, I've made up my mind.
what a pleasant surprise.
How's my favorite aunt? Oh, Aunt Jane, I'd like you to meet Ron McKelvey, my fiancé.
It's so good to meet you, Ron. I've heard so much about you.
Well, I've heard quite a bit about you, too.
Oh, well, anyway, it's nice to see you both. Won't you stay for dinner? I have a chicken cooking on the stove.
Oh, it's sweet of you, Auntie, but
Sounds good to me.
Well, then it's settled. Come on. Oh, Connie, this is nice to have you here. And Ron, the same.
Bishop White, thank you very much. I never can seem to find a coin to fit these gadgets.
Sounds like Mary. She carries everything in her bag except meter feed. And as a result, I'm practically supporting the city council paying fines.
Bishop, I'm sorry I was so rude the other night. I'm not usually that way. You've no idea how hard Mom and Dad have tried to break Ron and me up.
Let's talk about it, shall we? Have you got a few minutes? Come on, I'll buy you an ice cream.
Okay, Bishop. It's your nickel. They think they know what's best for me, but, well, Ron is such a wonderful fellow. I guess I'm just a little bit mixed up. My heart tells me to go ahead and marry Ron, and my head tells me not to. But I'm afraid my heart is winning right now. Well, you've met Ron. What do you think of him?
Connie, I know you wouldn't go with him if he weren't one of the best. Frankly, I'm quite impressed with him. But that isn't the question, is it?
Well, I know Ron isn't a member of our church, but, well, I feel in my heart that someday maybe I can convert him. Others have.
Unfortunately, not too many. Your chances are less than 10%.
Bishop, I love my church, but I guess right now I love Ron more. I can't seem to make my folks understand that this marriage just affects me, not the whole town.
I'll admit that your marriage doesn't have anything to do with this town, but it is going to affect more than just you.
Well, Ron, of course.
And your children, and their children. And, well, it all depends on how far you want to look ahead, I suppose.
How do you mean affect them?
In a lot of ways. Do you believe that children should have some kind of religious training?
Well, yes.
Then whose religion? Yours or his? Or maybe you'll let the children decide for themselves, and they might not want any religion at all. And of course, we haven't even mentioned temple marriage.
Bishop, all my life I've heard about temple marriage. But why is it so important? I mean, look at all the good people who have lived on the earth, married happily and died without being married in the temple.
Surely you know why we build temples.
Yes, to do work for the living and the dead.
Then you've answered your own question, Connie. Those people you've spoken about will all have their opportunity for marriage for eternity, providing they didn't have it in this life. You may be giving up your chance by marrying out of the temple. Let's put it this way. You love your parents and your family, don't you?
Yes, certainly.
Well, your children will love you the same way.
And if we don't get married in the temple, then we won't have the same family relationships. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me ask you this. Would you be willing to marry anyone with a built-in divorce?
But Ron doesn't believe in divorce.
Even so, if you should marry him and he should die, or you for that matter, then your marriage for this life only, or till death do you part, would be dissolved. Tell me this, Connie. Has Ron given you any indication of interest in the church?
Well, not exactly. You see, he's quite involved, or rather, I should say, interested in his own faith.
That's what I thought. If Ron had shown any interest at all in the church, I might give you different counsel. But as it is, with all the opportunities that he has had, he hasn't shown any inclination to join. As I recall, our stake missionaries didn't get very far with him. You know, Connie, eternity is a long time to think about the mistakes we make here. Connie, will you do one thing for me before you take this step? Will you read the 132nd section of the Doctrine and Covenants?
I promise, Bishop.
Just remember, one of the greatest gifts on this earth is free agency. We can advise, but of course the final decision must be yours. And whatever decision you make, I wish you all the happiness in the world.
Thank you, Bishop. Therefore, if a man marry him a wife in the world, and he marry her not by me nor by my word, and he covenant with her so long as he is in the world, and she with him, their covenant and marriage are not of force when they are dead, and when they are out of the world. Therefore they are not bound by any law when they are out of the world. Dear Aunt Jane, I need your advice. I am writing to ask what you think about Ron, I haven't been able to think of another thing all day. I know what he says is true, and yet...
Connie, look. I phoned him and told him we were coming. He's expecting us.
Look, what difference does it make?
If it doesn't make any difference, why don't we get one of the Mormon bishops here to marry us? After all, you implied that you might join my church someday.
But you don't understand. Ralph's my friend. Connie, darling, why should we let a little religious difference keep us apart? Our love is bigger than this. After all, it's just a simple little ceremony. Oh, he may ask you a few questions, but there's nothing really to it. If I could only make you understand how much I love you, how much I want you for my wife. Come on, darling. Let's go in.
Connie, come in, girl. What are you doing in Glen Oaks in the middle of the night?
Oh, Aunt Jane, I've never been more miserable in my entire life.
Oh, bless you. Oh, Connie. What's happened?
I just walked out on Ron.
Oh, come in and sit down and tell me all about it.
Ron and I drove up here to get married, and I was going to go through with it in spite of everything. But when I found out that we had to have our children raised in his faith, something happened. I just couldn't go through with it. Oh, Auntie,
Oh.
I love him so very much.
There. Everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. Here, dry your tears. Connie, I think you've shown remarkable courage.
Courage? Why do you say that, Aunt Jane? You were married outside of the church, and you and Uncle Arthur were happy, weren't you?
We were happy, very happy. I loved Arthur. But now that he's gone, I'm beginning to realize some of the important things we missed in our life. The priesthood, for instance. When I was a girl, we had the priesthood in our home. Your grandfather used to bless us when we were sick, and sometimes even when we were well. But I never had that privilege with our children. When they were sick, I had to send out for the elders. Then there was the spiritual welfare of our children. Even though your Uncle Arthur gave me complete freedom to rear them in our church, 3 of my 5 children are inactive. And every time I mention this, they say, well, look at Dad. He was a good man. But the saddest thing of all, Connie, is that I may have forfeited my right to have my dear children and my husband in the next world.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Suddenly, I feel all right. Like I know I've made the right decision.